Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining today for this first inaugural Parts GP Optimizer training webinar, but the third in our new Shop-Ware training webinar series. I really appreciate you coming to this session. We're looking forward to going through this important and really powerful feature. Carolyn Cocolette, CEO and founder of Shop-Ware, is on the phone and will be conducting the webinar. Just a quick note about how we're going to do this. If you have questions, please feel free to enter those into the GoToWebinar control panel and ask your question at any point during the webinar, and we will do our best to insert those into the flow, and then we will also make it a point to go over some of the more common questions at the end of the webinar. And as we have done in previous webinars, we'll get to every question, if not on the session. We'll follow up afterwards, and we'll publish that Q&A in the knowledge base and send that out. So please don't hold back. We love to see those questions. I didn't introduce myself. This is Matt Ellenwood, Vice President of Shop-Ware, and thanks again for joining us. At this point, I'll hand it over to Carolyn.
Thanks, Matt. Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. Happy New Year. Really excited to be here today to talk about the Optimizer. I know a lot of people have heard about it. It's one of our crown jewels, if you will. It's also totally new, industry first. Talk a little bit about why we decided to do what we did about that, but it's something that people haven't experienced before. So we're really excited to be able to demystify today. I'm going to try and keep it less about the why, which of course is, super exciting for me, and really try to keep this focused on training so that folks who are using Shop-Ware and using the Optimizer currently, or considering using the Optimizer currently, feel like you have the wisdom that you need to move forward and take advantage of this terrific feature. So try to keep it short. And then we're going to tip into questions here, as usual, towards the end of the call, and happy to answer whatever comes to mind. Also, Matt, will interrupt me if there's something that comes up, or I skipped over something, as usual. So thanks again. Let's get started. So what I want to begin by showing off is the Optimizer-related articles that we have freshly published in our new knowledge base. For those of you who have been on this before or have been following our release notes, we recently launched our knowledge base, which is support.shopware.com. And if you go to training guides, you will see a section titled Optimizer, and you will see all of the articles that are going to essentially they cover, but they are the same kinds of things that I'm going to be talking about in a higher level today. So if you want to go back and review, these are all here for you for perpetuity. In terms of what these include, this first article, quick guide and articles, is actually an outline that takes you through the different articles that are included. They have some introductory and again, background on why we like the Optimizer better than a traditional parts matrix, as well as how to start, how to make inventory changes, how to manage groups, or what we call Optimizer exceptions, how to turn it off, and then some detail about canned jobs. I have one more outstanding article I'll be publishing here shortly about KPIs, but we'll talk about that a little bit today too. In terms of why the Optimizer, briefly, folks who are familiar with the traditional parts matrix have liked that matrix very much because it's helped them be able to mark up their parts and improve their parts GP with some level of strategy. The reality, though, is that strategy is entirely human-powered. And I actually have some examples here of kind of what that looks like traditionally. So this would be the example of a parts matrix in a traditional format where you're managing the different cost buckets and what sort of markups you would want, and potentially you would have multiples of these, and you would find different parts to different matrices, and that inherently takes up a lot of time. There is this concept of a linear matrix that some people ask about, and here's an example of what that looks like. We've basically taken the level of complexity that traditional flat matrix has and upped an order of magnitude on that. So we could just count the number of fields and stuff that are on this one screen, and this is just one of many screens to try and manage something like this. So, upshot is that these traditional methods were trying to help you mark up your parts, but weren't actually, you were working for the tools, tools weren't working for you. It required a lot of time on your part, and frankly, it's a certain level of guesswork because you can never predict what you're going to sell the next day and how you should be pricing, basically by today's standards instead of, constantly making adjustments in hindsight. So when it came time for us to build a feature like this for Shop-Ware, we decided, no way, we're not going to do anything like that. What does that actually look like? So under this intro article, and again, you can read this on your own time, I've embedded a couple of images to sort of talk you through the concepts here and how the optimizer works. So in this first picture, we see a graph, and the graph is x-axis is cost, so the cost of your parts from very, very cheap to very expensive, and then your markup amount. So over here on the left, you see a markup of 1 is basically to sell your parts at their cost, which is to say you're not making any money on top of what you've paid for them. That's a markup of 1. What Shop-Ware asks you to do is to take 2 numbers. So it asks you, what do you want to mark up your least expensive parts, which we call the max markup. And then it asks you, what do you want to mark up your most expensive parts or your minimum markup? And so basically we're seeing those 2 dots here on that graph. And then finally, it asks you for a third number. It asks you for what is your target gross profit as a unit of percentage. And I'll show you the interface for where you enter that. But basically, you're being asked to tell Shop-Ware 3 things. Tell me, how much do you want to mark up the cheap stuff? How much do you want to mark up the very most expensive stuff? And then what do you want to make in GP percentage? And then based on that information, Shop-Ware draws you a custom markup curve specific not only to those 3 parameters, but the parts that you have sold in typically the last 30 days. And that is by the distribution of the cost of the parts that you have sold. So given parts with low cost, high cost, and everything between, if we were to sell parts going forward, what would we need to charge for them, given their costs, given that what we mark them up changes depending on whether they're cheap or whether they're expensive? What would that price be for any given part cost based on your actual sales history? So it draws this curve for you. What is special about this curve is not only the fact that it's a curve, right, and not a series of connected dots or a step function of a matrix, but this custom curve, first of all, is looking at not only your own custom inputs, but on your shop's sales history. So it's unique to your shop's sales performance. But also it is going to adjust on a daily basis according to your sales going forward. So this line that you're seeing here is going to flex as the cost distribution of the parts that you sell changes. And it does that in order so that essentially, if you will, from a concept, the area underneath this graph represents your target gross profit percentage. So basically, Shop-Ware manages the area underneath this curve to deliver you the profit that you want to make. Now, you can look at your parts data and do some statistical analysis. I think some of that is what ends up going into, the entries that people make in traditional matrices. But it's also important to note that the shape of this curve is also non-trivial, right? We have certain things that we accept will be marked up higher or lower depending on their cost. And so sort of the Shop-Ware special sauce is not only the processing power that is built into the cloud to allow this thing to make its calculations, but also the shape of this curve being the appropriate shape in order to deliver not only the profit you need, but also appropriate pricing to your customers. So this is what the optimizer is doing. Now let me show you how that looks on the application. So this is, as most people are familiar, a copy of my own shop. So we're going to spend some time looking at Luscious Garage's data. But Luscious Garage already has the optimizer turned on. So I'm going to show you the workflow from the very beginning. So over here, I have a demo account. I have just enabled the optimizer for this account. So you will see that the optimizer tab is showing here in this submenu, but the optimizer is not yet turned on. And I can tell that it is not what we call active because I do not see a column that shows my parts GP. If I go into the optimizer tab, this page will show you, again, some higher level guidance on what the optimizer is doing. But then it's walking you through what you need to set this guy up. So, once again, you are being asked to enter 3 different numbers. The first one is, how much do you want to mark up your cheap parts, the very cheapest? And Shop-Ware defaults the entry to 6. You can go in and edit this and make it 8 or 7.5 or 5.5 or whatever you want. But typically, this is a number above 2, and probably significantly above 2. And the ceiling for this number is 10. So you are able to enter any number between 2 and 10. The second value is your minimum markup. So what do you want to mark up your most expensive parts? So again, not the drain plug washers. We're talking about the Jasper engines and the hybrid batteries here. Again, Shop-Ware provides a selection for you. It puts in 1.5. If you want to put in, 1.4 or, whatever you want, this number has to be between 1 and 2. So you can enter those 2 things. And then last but not least, you're being asked, what do you want to make? So what's your target GP percentage? Some folks follow, the typical sort of management rule of thumb, which is 60%. And of course, that varies depending on your own service mix and what kind of parts you're selling. We'll see in a minute that Luscious is actually a lot lower than that. Shop-Ware defaults this to being 45. But if I wanted to set this to, 60 or whatever I wanted, I could just type it in and there it is. So unlike those other examples where you were filling out, God knows how many fields, here you're entering 3 numbers, and those numbers are pretty straightforward. And then you're given a great big green button, which is to turn this thing on. So in order for the optimizer to turn on, it requires a certain amount of sales history. So if you haven't used Shop-Ware very much, or you have not migrated your data, you will see that this button is gray. Once you have sufficient sales data, this button will turn green, as you see it now. And typically it takes about 30 days worth of sales history. If you do migrate your data, of course, you'll have plenty of sales history there, and the optimizer can turn on, before you even go live. So I'm going to click this button. You'll see that when I click this button for the first time, I have 2 choices. So I have the choice to go ahead and turn the optimizer on for all of my parts, or turn the optimizer on, but do not actually turn on the optimizer pricing for my parts. So in other words, this first choice is like, yes, I'll go in and I'll opt out the parts that I don't want to use the optimizer. The second one is, no, I'm going to be proactive and choose to opt in my parts, which ones I want to use the optimizer. And either one is fine. For folks that are kind of uncertain about whether they think that the optimizer's prices are going to be correct, and just want to sort of give it a test drive, you can go ahead and click the second choice with no penalty, and the optimizer will be active, and it will put suggestions for your parts pricing, both on individual edit part modals and also on the RO. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. So you can reference the optimizer, the optimized prices, but it will not actually put those parts at those prices onto your ROs. So for folks that want to kind of wade into the shallow end of the pool, this is a good choice for you. And I'll go ahead and choose that now. So when I kick this thing off, I'm going to see a couple things. One is that the optimizer has been enabled. So that is good news. I can see that it's turned on. And there should be a modal popping up here that's saying that the calculations are taking place. Let me just refresh this page and see if that turns on. So normally there will be a modal here, or excuse me, a little heads up alert that lets you know that the calculations have started. Since I'm on a different demo account, it might not be working, but I'll show it to you in another window. Once this thing is turned on, you'll see a couple of other things that are different. Oh, very good. Here it is. First, of course, is that you still have the ability to edit these parameters. So if I decided tomorrow that I didn't want to make 60A1 to make 62, all I have to do is go and enter the percentage right here, and it will recalculate all of my prices. It also then surfaces GP exceptions. So I get to see where I can define certain groups that I can assign to different sets of parts in order to assign them a different pricing target. And here you'll see that you're given some choices. The Shop-Ware will automatically put in dealer tires and 12-volt batteries for you to kind of get an example, and those are set at sort of default GP parameters. You can, of course, edit all of these and change this to whatever you want, or change the GP percentage. So you do get some suggestions here. So that is something that you see on this page. We've also recently added this new feature, which is the ability to choose whether or not you want to have the the parts with the optimizer turned on to use the optimized price or the list price, whichever is higher, or to just always use the optimized price. In other words, even if your list price on a part is higher than what you would need to sell that part at to make your part's GP numbers, I don't care. I just want to sell at the optimized price because I know that that'll basically guarantee I'm getting what I need, and I don't have to worry about list prices that are inflated by an e-commerce partner or something like that. That's traditionally why people turn off list prices, is because they say, you know what, when I get parts back from Speed Dial, they always use the OE price, and that's too high. Just sell at the optimized price. Thank you very much. And then I don't have to go in and worry about it. If that's what you wish, you can just click this checkbox. In those cases, this is only a configuration that affects parts that have the optimizer turned on. It does not have any impact on how you sell parts with the optimizer turned off. So, if you've obviously a list price entered for a part, and that's the price you're going to sell at, it's obviously not going to ignore that price. It'll just use it. So this only affects parts that have the optimizer turned on. Finally, down here at the bottom, I see deactivate the optimizers if I want to turn this thing off or want to, abort this calculation process for whatever reason. I can click deactivate, and I have the choice to turn it off. So besides this page, obviously this page changes a little bit. When I turn this puppy on and I go back to my inventory page, I'm going to see a couple new things. So first of all, I'm going to see this GP column, as I mentioned. And I'm going to depart this page and go over to Luscious Garage here in just a second. But just to show that now that I've turned this guy on, you see that this column appears. And I'll talk you through some of the other things that appear with the optimizer turned on. So I'll leave this demo account and go back over to my beloved shop account over here. So we are in a copy of Luscious Garage. We're looking at the inventory page. You are seeing results that happen to be for a search on Toyota hybrid battery. Once again, you're seeing the GP column over here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this and kind of show you what it looks like just when you land on the page. So here is the column over here. You'll see that that column has percentages. It also has these icons that look like price tags. So what this column is doing is telling you where is this part's sell price coming from. So as always, we show what the part is going to sell for and what its cost is in this table as well. But this new column is helping you understand, hey, where does this sell price originate? Because of course now we have choices to have parts with the optimizer turned on or off, and then some other settings which I'll explain. So this column is helping you interpret what the sell price is. So in the case where you see the tag icon indicates to you that this sell price is coming from this part has the optimizer turned on. So every part which has the optimizer turned on will have a tag. Now you'll notice that this tag sometimes has a star and sometimes does not. When you see the star, it's because the sell price is the optimized price. When the tag is blank, it is because the sell price is the list price, because the list price is higher than the optimized price. So if I click on this and I open up this edit modal and I scroll down, I see that the list price is $17.16. The optimized price is $16.92. I have my shop configured to use whichever is higher, so it is selling at the list price. What is great about this is if my GP target changed, like tomorrow I decided I wanted to make 50% GP, my optimized price would go up, and then it may be higher than the list price. So then it would start to sell at the optimized price. And so basically what this allows me to do is feel like the optimized price is a floor that I will guarantee my parts profit. And then if I just happen to have a list price that is higher for those parts, then go ahead and give me that extra cash. So the default setting here is that, if I can make more money on this part, please do. Obviously, if I had configured the account to use only optimized prices, I would see no parts with the blank price tag. I would only see the tag with the star in it because I wouldn't be using list prices at all. When a part has the optimizer turned off, instead of the tag, you will see a percentage, and that percentage is the GP percentage of that current sell price. So in these cases, I'm seeing it's 26%, these are 25, this air cleaner assembly is 67, et cetera, et cetera. And then you'll notice sometimes the percentage is bold and sometimes the percentage is regular typeface. And that is to indicate that these parts that have a bold percentage have a group assigned to it. So I have assigned a special pricing target for these parts, and I can tell that that's the case because the percentage is bold. I know they're already in the group. In terms of being able to review the actual optimizer's pricing, obviously you get the GP column and you can, review what the settings are for your inventory. And of course, if I wanted to, type in Toyota HV battery, I'd get to see, what's going on with my settings for my hybrid batteries, which we see over here. I'm going to go into an example with these in just a minute. So not only when you land on the page, but whatever you happen to be searching for, you can review. You can also open what we call the edit modal for any individual parts and see the pricing there. So I will open this modal, and when I scroll down, I see the optimizer settings down here at the bottom. So notice that even though this part has the optimizer turned off, which is to say that the optimized price will never be used, I still get to see the optimized price here. And that's very helpful because this is what I have to sell my parts at in order to make my GP. So even if I have to make a special exception here because, for example, it's a 12-volt battery, or it's an oil filter, or it's something else, that dealer part that is well published across the enthusiast websites, and I can't possibly get 45% parts GP on it. Whatever the situation may be, looking at this modal is giving me the information about what I have to sell this thing at to make my money. So even if I'm setting an exception, this is a truth teller about how much money I'm leaving on the table. And that's an important point in terms of the optimizer's pricing strategy. So a lot of people, when they think about this tool, they think that the optimizer is going to basically take over your pricing. And while it's certainly built in such a way that you can set it and forget it and stop micromanaging your parts pricing, it's ultimately up to you whether you respect what the optimizer is telling you or you don't, which is to say that if you consistently sell parts on repair orders for less than the optimized price, then you are not going to make your parts GP percentage. And some people think, okay, well, when I do that, Shop-Ware, the optimizer is going to go in and jack up my other parts to compensate. No, it will not do that. So the optimized prices that are generated by the curve are based on the distribution, again, of your parts costs in a given sales history, so typically 30 days. And that is it. It is only looking at the costs. It is not looking at, and the distribution, how many did you sell of here and there, high, low, in between. It is not looking at what you sold your parts for. And that's very important because when you're thinking about how this tool is going to help you, you don't have to worry about you having to lose control. It's going to make suggestions assuming that you are participating. But if you choose not to participate, for example, you just turn it on for suggestions, and you're not actually using it to price your parts, you're going to be able to price your parts however you wish. The thing you need to remember is that if you consistently sell your parts then less than the optimized prices, then obviously your parts GP is going to be lower than your target. However, if you have a pretty standard set of parts that are exceptions, like 12-volt batteries and filters and stuff like that, the usual suspects, and they are truly exceptions, so the majority of your parts are selling at optimized prices, and you find that you're still not quite hitting your target, what you can do is go in and goose the the target GP on your optimizer settings page. In other words, bump it up, 1-2%, and then you can essentially let the optimizer compensate for those level of exceptions. But you have to go in and tell it to do that. It will not do that automatically. And what it's basically doing is if you were to consistently discount, if it did it the other way and actually tried to compensate for your discounting, if you kept discounting, pretty soon you're going to have parts coming onto your ROs for $1 million, and then the whole system falls apart. So ultimately these are suggestions, and you need to either honor the suggestions or not. What is interesting in this modal, of course, as I mentioned, is that I get to see what that suggestion is. So I get my truth telling. But also, anytime you go into these edit modals, what you can do is, basically see how the optimized price curve varies depending on the part cost. So when I, go in here, I can see, okay, for a cost of $1,892, my optimized price is $2,613, and that is a 28% parts GP. If I look at, say, a part that's a lot cheaper, for a cost of $58, the optimized price is $103.67, and the GP percentage is 44%. So this is this magic that I'm talking to you about, which is what's the shape of this curve, right? What do I charge for the cheap parts, and what do I charge for the expensive parts? Because it's not a linear markup curve. So you can see those things here, and that's kind of edifying. You can also just play with it freeform. So if I click New Part, and this is something that I would recommend for folks that are new to the optimizer, is after you turn it on, click New Part and go to Create a New Part from scratch. You will see the optimized price now presenting in this modal. And if I type in, $1, it will tell me what my optimized price should be for a part that costs $1. If I want to see what it's $1.02, it's going to update the price right there in real time, show me what I should be marking up a part for $1.02. So, it's completely incremental, and you can basically watch the optimizer, work. What would it turn a cost of $1.03 into? Likewise, you can turn it into $10, or $100, or $1,000, and see basically, where the points are on this curve. Granted that the number that it suggests for $1 and $10 and $100 today is going to be different when you check this tomorrow, because you've sold some parts, different parts with different costs in the course of those 24 hours. But the amount of change that it is making on a day-to-day basis is actually quite small, because your distribution of parts costs hasn't dramatically changed in the last 24 hours, right? You are selling different kinds of parts, certainly, but in aggregate, the total number of parts that you sold in the last 30 days, that one day is just a small fraction. So the adjustments to the curve are very, very small. And essentially that's what it allows you to do as far as tracking against your target. So some people think this is going to turn on and my pricing is going to go completely insane. I'm going to have a brake job today that's $45, or let's see, it's probably too low. Let's say it's $110 for my brake job, and then I look at it tomorrow and it's 140. Big jump, right? Practically 30%. No, in fact, the changes that are going to be made are very small, and they will get even smaller over time, because the effort that the optimizer has to make to deliver you your target GP is smaller and smaller as you're following optimized prices. And I will show you that as an example in Luscious Garage's analytics here in a minute. So when you turn the optimizer on, you have an opportunity to come into the edit part modal and see what the optimized prices are, again, given your service mix, given your pricing parameters. You're also able to review the pricing of your parts by parts in groups. So if I want to see, say I pick here, and here, and here, and this part here, a handful of Toyota hybrid batteries, once I select parts over here in this right-hand column, you'll notice that the blue button at the top turns, the button at the top turns blue. This is actions. And then under that menu, you will now see a new selection called Edit Pricing. When the optimizer is not active, this is not available to you. Once you turn it on, you will see this. And this is really edifying as well. So you can look at, what are the pricing effects part by part or price by price, or you can look at groups of parts and how the optimizer affects the pricing there. And you do that through this modal. So if I click Edit Pricing, it's going to open up this modal, and it basically gives me the statistics on all of the parts that I have selected in what we call a batch. So in this case, I've selected 4 parts. 2 of the parts have the optimizer on, and 2 of the parts have the optimizer off. So this is kind of a mixed bag, right? It tells me what my average cost is. It tells me what my average list price is and what my average sell price is. So I get some, high-level KPIs on how I'm doing with these parts right now, as well as their GP percentages. And then I have the opportunity to see, well, what would happen if I set them all to on? How much more money would I make on these parts if I went ahead and just let the optimizer do the work? So I can see that. I can also see, what would the impacts be if I, turn them all off? So that dollar amount too. I can reset that, go back to where I was. When I select to turn them all off, I'm also given the option to then assign these parts a group. And that's going to be a segue into my discussion about exceptions. Matt, how am I doing? Am I making sense? Is there anything I need to clarify at this point?
No, I think we're doing great. Exceptions is kind of the topic that I think we've got a question or two on already. Thinking about dealer parts as an exception and what drives that GP, for example. So that sounds great as a next topic.
Super. So of course, everyone wants to make parts GP, and the idea that you just enter one number and then Shop-Ware goes and fetches it for you is obviously very popular. What is even more popular is after you turn this thing on and it starts to work for you, and you realize that it does in fact work for you, and you can stop worrying about this. That's a very powerful feeling when that has just been taken off your plate. That being said, there are, of course, groups of parts that we're all familiar with that customers have higher price sensitivity on. They're more commodities. And then the question becomes, okay, great. Well, I want to make 60% GP on the whole, but I can't sell my quarts of oil for $10 a piece, or maybe you can, but depending on what the costs are, can I mark up my quarts of oil times 4x or something like that? You might not be able to do that. So how do you manage that? So what Shop-Ware provides is this concept of exceptions. And again, this is designed on purpose to make this process a lot simpler for you than having to have lots of different matrices and then assign parts to different matrices. That's a lot of work. So what is Shop-Ware's answer? When you go to the optimizer page, again, we're going to look at Luscious Garage here. And I scroll down, you'll notice where my markup parameters are, and our target's 40%. We sell a lot of dealer parts, so we don't come anywhere near 60%. Down here underneath, you see what are Luscious Garage's GP, quote unquote, exceptions. So the things that we pull out are hybrid batteries, 12-volt batteries, some dealer parts, and then, last but not least, tires, right? Tires are a really great example of a commodity that you just can't sell like you can a hybrid or a, body ECU or something like that. Our tire markup percentage is, for tires, did I say tires? I can't remember if I said target or tires, is 24%. So what we have done is assigned a group, called it what the exception is, in this case, tires. And then we've said, okay, we're not going to use the optimizer, but what are we going to use? In this case, 24%. Now you might decide that you want to sell your tires at 20% or 21% or 21.5%. You can do all of that here, and that's fine. The only thing that's important is that you create the group and you assign this target percentage, or the assigned percentage for it. So then once you've got your groups made, you go back to the inventory page and you can assign the group to an individual part, or you can assign the group to a handful of parts, a batch of parts. So in this case, when I look at this interstate 12-volt battery, lo and behold, I can see that the GP percentage is bolded, so that helps me know, hey, it's in a group. And when I open this thing up and I scroll down to my optimizer settings, I see that the optimizer is off, and that it's using the group 12-volt batteries. So if you were in this individual modal and your optimizer is turned on, you're not going to see that selection here. But when you turn the optimizer off, you get the choice, and then it'll obviously remember what group you had it assigned in before. You don't have to, reassign groups on a go-forward basis. Once you've got your parts assigned to the groups, you're good to go. So in this case, the thing is set to the 12-volt batteries group. I can see the other groups here in this drop-down menu. So if this was a tire, I could pick the tire group or whatever the case may be. And as usual, underneath it, it's giving me some hints about, what's the pricing strategy here? Where is my sell price coming from? So in this case, it's telling me your optimizer is turned off. The GP that you set for your group is 24%. In this particular case of this part, the percentage markup for the group GP is higher than the list price. So it's going to sell at whatever's higher, which happens to be the group price. So that's 24%. We see the sell price here, and we see that the GP percentage of that sell price is 24%. Now, if your list price is higher, that's not typical, right? Usually, you're buying your tires, and the MSRP for the tire is even lower than what you might want to make. So you're just trying to help yourself out a little bit. But if you do have a situation where the list price just happens to be higher. So in this case, I'll type in, 135. This is going to update for me again. All this is done for you. And it's telling me, hey, the list GP is higher. In this case, it's 31%. So I'm going to go ahead and sell this thing at my list price instead of at the group price. So kind of like what we were talking about before with the optimized price being a floor for profitability, the group does the same thing. The group assigns a floor for your profitability for these parts. If you want to go in and change your list price to something else because you want to sell for a little bit more, but you keep the group price there as a fallback, you can do that. And then obviously the big win here is that if I decide tomorrow that I want to sell my tires at 25% instead of 24%, instead of having to go in and reconfigure my whole matrix or whatever the case may be, I will just go back to my optimizer page. I will, pick my group. So I'll pick, let's say these 12-volt batteries is the one I was looking at. It's 26. If I decide, hey, you know what, I want that to be 28, update, fantastic. It's updated for me with that one value entered. And when I go back to my inventory page, I'm going to see that these 12-volt batteries are now selling at 28%. So without me having to do anything, now all of a sudden I'm making some more money on my 12-volt batteries. So way easier management for these kinds of things than you might be used to. So that's how you assign an individual part to a group. You also have the ability to assign multiple parts to a group. So say, for example, I searched for, 12-volt battery, and I wanted to pick all my parts that were supposed to go into this batch or, all get sent into this group. I can go through and, select the entire list and then pull out the ones that don't fit, like this ground cable, for example, or let's see what else I got in here. This battery tender, like that. I have the ability to once again pick the parts that I want to include in the group all at once, go back to my edit pricing modal, set them to off, pick the group I want, in this case, 12-volt batteries, and click continue. It'll confirm, is this what you want to do? Yes or no. So it's not applying changes without you. And then I click update, and it's going to reassign all these parts to the group for 12-volt batteries. So that's how you're managing exceptions on the inventory page. There is one other way that you can control your parts pricing independent of the optimizer, and that is on canned jobs. So many folks are familiar with Shop-Ware's canned jobs. It's, again, one of our crown jewels one of the really powerful parts of the application. If I open this repair order, let me pick one of my canned jobs here. I will pick, I don't know, 60K. So here's my 60K for the Prius C and another Prius C, Babouche. And then I can go and edit this puppy. So on this edit can job page, you will now see when the optimizer is turned on this selection to include the can job in the optimized pricing or not. It also gives you a little tooltip here to tell you. So in this case, we are subscribing to the optimizer, and you see that the price before tax is $498.65. If I was to say no thank you, it will take all these parts that are included in this can job and sell them instead at the list price instead of the optimized price or the list price, whichever is higher. And we see that this price changes. It turns out that my list prices are actually higher than my optimized prices for some of these parts. My price is actually going up. But basically what this allows, it's going down $8. That's what I would have expected. So I'm going down $8 the minute that I turn off this feature. So what that allows you to do here is say, okay, when I add a air filter to a job normally, it will apply that air filter at the optimized price if the optimizer is turned on for it, right? But if I want to include that air filter in a can job, and I want that can job to not change, I want this to be a menu price. Maybe you've got it on your website. Maybe you put it on a coupon, and just can't go up $4 here or $3 here. You gotta, have it be exactly what it said on the flyer. Then all you do is just deselect this box, and it's going to use whatever the list price is for that part always, even if the optimizer is turned on for that part when you use this can job. So basically, in those cases, you can use the list price like a special price for those parts in certain cases for promos, for winter specials, whatever you want. That's how you accomplish that. So those are the examples of how you can make exceptions to optimized pricing. Again, we've got a ton of information. First of all, how to turn this thing on. So the same things that I was just talking about, how to edit your inventory, how to manage groups and exceptions. All that stuff is documented here. Also, can jobs, the details with how the can jobs work. All this stuff you can reference in our knowledge base. So no need to remember it all now. Before I close for questions, one other thing that I wanted to hit on, which is what this is really all about, are the results that you get from this feature. And, okay, great. You tell me that it, waves its magic wand and it comes up with the magic price. I have no idea how it did that. That is really amazing. But, my goodness, at the end of the month, am I going to have that target GP? I find that hard to believe. Does this thing actually work? I'm going to use my own shop as an example. And as I promised, I was going to show you our analytics. So for folks that are in our analytics service, you're familiar with what this page looks like. What I have done is picked a date range for the last 2 years, so all of 2017 and all of 2018. And when you look at the parts GP, this green line, you see what I'm talking about as far as it's smoothing out your parts pricing. So back here, 2 years ago, hard to believe, Luscious Garage's parts GP was 28%. So we didn't have the optimizer. In May, we launched the optimizer as sort of an alpha, and Luscious was one of the first participants to make sure this thing didn't, break the application and, send all of our customers to Yelp writing us 1-star reviews about how absurd our pricing was. So we got to be the guinea pig. Even with just some suggestions, we saw an improvement in our pricing, and a non-trivial one, right? 9 points just by having that information available to us. So for those people who are feeling a little lack of confidence, even if you turn this thing on and don't use it on a single part, at least having that information there, that truth telling that I was talking about, once you've got that, that will make an impact. Of course, once we turned it on, we saw this thing bump right up. And while we did see some initial changes, and some of this will change on a month-by-month basis, just because the way your parts mix changes. Did I sell a lot of hybrid batteries, or did I sell a lot of cabin air filters, right? So it does vary depending on your service mix, but by and large, the pricing strategy becomes much more sane, and we actually see that start to get very, very smooth here in the subsequent year, where our GP percentage on parts really just stopped being a question. If I go back and look at individual numbers, I went and pulled a report for the last 6 months. We look at Luscious Garage's parts GP, we see it's 39.32%. So pretty darn close to 40%, which is our target. This might be an opportunity for me to go and bump it up to 41% to make up for our 12-volt batteries and our hybrid batteries. But you can see how this thing delivers and allows you to spend all that precious time that you used to spend worrying about this, doing more important things. Running your business, taking care of your customers, I don't know, spending time with your kids. So on that note, Matt, what other questions have come up that I can tackle for the remaining time we have?
Sure. Just jumping back to exceptions, got a couple of questions there. The first one is managing your exceptions if you're doing e-com orders on something that's not an inventory, and how you can put those parts into an exception group.
Mm-hmm. Good question. So when parts come back that you've never seen before, they default to being turned on to the optimizer. So if you have the optimizer enabled and you're buying parts from e-commerce vendors on the regular basis, speed dial, PartsDeck, whatever, every time a new part comes in that you've never seen before, it's going to be priced at optimizer on, and then whichever is higher, list price or optimized price. If you have that one configuration off, if you turn that configuration off, it's always going to sell at the optimized price. If it's a 12-volt battery and you want to opt into a group, it doesn't matter whether you are on your on an RO buying parts or whether you're on the inventory page bringing parts back, but whichever parts you have just purchased will appear at the top of this list. So whichever have just come back will be here, and then you have an opportunity to edit the part price, edit the group by opening the part in the modal and assigning the group to it at that time. So you would just see the ones that are coming back here and make those edits on a case-by-case basis. There's been some discussion about whether or not we need to actually build this into the parts receiving process, and we haven't heard that from people. They've been able to manage it this way. The optimized price is also, and the list price, whatever you're supposed to be selling this part at, is also visible to you on the RO. So after you make this change here, let's say you had ordered the parts through the repair order, and so those parts are already on a job somewhere. Let me go back to this one I had open. Oh, rats. Let me add a service that has some parts on it. What was I doing, that 60K? This is where I get in trouble if I'm using my actual data and I'm why we have a demo account. So I just selected this can job. This can job is going to come down onto this repair order. And now that I have parts on it, I can click on any one of these parts. So drain plug gasket's a great example. So here it's showing me for this particular part what my inventory says I should be selling it at. The inventory price happens to be handled manually, so it's not following my optimized price, but I see that price is 1.31. So if you assign that 12-volt battery to a group, and then you want to come back here and update the quoted price on the RO to be the part price that you wanted in inventory, you would see that price here, and then you can copy that price into this quoted price if it's still following whatever came back from e-com. And that's true whether that part had an MSRP that wasn't matching your group or whatever the case may be. You'll get your part here, the suggested part price that's coming out of your inventory, and you can put that into what you're selling it for on this particular RO. You also have the opportunity to view the suggested optimized price for every single part on your RO if you wish. So this is I want to go in and look at every single part, make sure I'm selling it correctly. In that context, you also get to see the optimized price here. So again, the truth telling, okay, I'm going to sell this part for 1.3, but I really should be selling it for 2.7.
Carolyn, I think we've got time for one more question. There are a few that are related to reporting, especially around kind of how do I see the reporting performance related to my exceptions. So I think some words on how you can do that today, and then also some of the things that we might have planned for the future would be helpful.
So we don't currently copy the group of the parts down to the RO level. So once the parts are actually getting sold on repair orders, you don't see from where that price came, as far as this logic that I was showing you, where it tells, okay, which is higher, which group, is it this, is it that, whatever. That doesn't necessarily translate down to the individual RO at the context that you sold it. However, you can look at all the parts that you've sold for whatever time range, date range you wish. And you do that through the reporting page. So let me go to reports. Let me pick, last month. And once I've got a date range that's got some ROs in it, I've got this export button. And there I see my parts details. And I can do, if you want to go and audit, how am I doing on hybrid batteries for the last 6 months or something? I can do that too, right? I can go back here and make this 7, run another report. I want to see all my parts that I sold in the last 6 months. It's going to update this page. And once this page is updated, I'll wait for it to do that. I can click export and click part details. And now I'm going to, pull everything out that I've sold, any part that I've sold on any repair order for this given date range. Now, once you have that spreadsheet, you have an opportunity to sort that spreadsheet. And what I like to do is calculate the GP percentage for each individual part. It doesn't currently do that for you, but you can do that in your own column by, taking the sell price and subtracting the cost and then dividing it by the sell price. That is your GP percentage. And then running that through the entire spreadsheet. And then you can sort the spreadsheet based on that value. So you can actually see which are the parts that I did, well on, and which are the parts that I didn't do well on. And that's been an opportunity to, go in and diagnose, what am I not selling at the GP percentage that I wish? Where's my, who's making too many discounts or this or that. You can also sort that same spreadsheet by the name of the part. So if you're using a convention like 12-volt battery or hybrid battery, or you can also, find the part number and sort by the part number. So you get all of the hybrid batteries that you sold in one block, all of the HE batteries. Likewise, you have the brand of the part. So if you want to see how am I doing on Toyotas, how am I doing on Napas, you can search by your brand and do that. And you also have information about the parts that you sold on which types of cars. So if you want to see how am I doing on Prius GP versus how am I doing on Ford Escape, for example, GP, you can do that too. So once you have this spreadsheet, you really have lots of options as far as how you want to slice and dice that data, which is why we, of course, offer the exports as opposed to hard-coded UI and app. It allows you, kind of infinite flexibility. And if you need any more help on knowing how to generate the report or sort the report or get the information, we're happy to help you out of support at any time.
Okay, we are at the bottom of the hour, so I think we're gonna wrap things up. We've got a few more questions that will get answered, and like I said, we always follow up, and we will also publish some answers to these questions in the knowledge base that will be available to you as well. So thank you very much for the attention and for the questions. And Carolyn, is there any closing remarks on your end?
Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. I look forward to having a two-way conversation with you sometime soon. Thanks very much for listening. Just as a close, when you use a shop management system, that shop management system should make your life easier, not harder. Optimizer is a great example of how Shop-Ware is built to work for you, not the other way around. For prospects that are considering this, talk to your friends that are also using this. This thing screams. get on board, turn this thing on, and take some stuff off your very valuable plate. Thanks very much, you guys.